have one woman who has, I think we all know her. The first time I saw Cindy Sheehan was probably when all of us saw Cindy Sheehan. It was when we turned on the news that one day, and we saw her sitting in a ditch, and George Bush was riding a bicycle past her as she sat in the ditch. And now she is riding her bicycle from California to Washington, D.C.
Yeah!
This woman sitting in a ditch, you know, and now she's riding across the country and she's meeting little groups of people like this as she goes, and she's meeting people and talking, and she's this is what she's about. She's about community, and she's about bringing the word of community and talking about peace and talking about what we can do and who we are, is reaching out to people. And I'm going to introduce her no more because I don't think she needs it. But ladies and gentlemen, Cindy Sheehan.
Nice whistle.
I love this lady with my heart and soul.
I love my cool sisters here in Phoenix. We're code gold now. Hey, thank you so much for being here. Thank you, Lisa, for your work and organizing this. Thank you, Edwina, for helping bring me here. I got my crew, Malcolm, back here.
Welcome.
Dan's back there. They're my Tour de Peace crew. You know, I feel like I've been abused by the U.S. military, like over and over and over again.
Yeah,
Not just having my son killed. And I want to thank Jason. Jason back there. I don't even know your last name.
Ogner.
He's our host, and he's just made it very comfortable for us to be here. And I love this activist, kind of anarchist, kind of, you know, don't rely. We can't rely on the government. We have to rely on ourselves.
Amen. Yes.
And we have to build a society that is we have to build a society that is caring to each other to help us recover from the traumas that this society delivers to us on a daily basis. You know, I had to, before my son was killed, I had to help him get over the trauma of being in the military. Not help him get through it, but, you know, as a very sensitive, peaceful person who joined the military in 2000 to get his college education, he was abused. You know, he had, after he finished boot camp when he was first stationed at Fort Hood, he called me and said that he was being harassed by his commander, sergeant, for being a virgin. Yeah, they were saying, Sheehan, we got to get you laid. And he was like, but it's against my values. I want to save that for my wife. And so they made him feel less of a person because he had some core values. And so, I mean, it was just terrible. It was terrible him being in the Army. It was terrible, of course, when he was killed. And he refused the order that killed him. You know, but he was forced to go. And he ended up being killed just days after he got to Iraq. So, I'm not like, I appreciate Dennis and his very, very wonderful words and his long activism, but I don't think the U.S. military is a good choice for anybody. You know, but as caring communities, we have to give our children alternatives because there's no jobs. College is extremely prohibitive. I mean, you know, people are joining basically because they don't have any other opportunity. But joining this organization, I think, is we have to give them alternatives. I'd rather that Casey spent the rest of his life playing video games on my couch than be where he is right now.
Yeah.
So anyway, I also have a podcast called Cindy Sheehan Soapbox, and we've done many shows on this, and I'm hoping to have Colleen on soon to tell her story. Her daughter, in fact, can you come up here and tell your story? Do you feel comfortable to tell us about your, if you don't feel comfortable, you do.
That's why I'm here.
Yeah.
This is,
I don't know, did I step on your program?
Not at all. Not at all.
No, I always go from the heart. So this is my heart told me to bring Colleen up so she could tell her story.
I'm long-winded, but I promise to keep it short. I do want to thank everybody here, first of all, and excuse me if I get a little bit emotional. The victims, their families, their friends. My daughter was Amy Sebo Tirador, and she was raped repeatedly, and then set up and to be found. So CID closed the case as suicide, of course, which I knew right from the beginning. It's not true. Everybody, I'm from upstate New York. Everybody knows it's not true. Anybody that's heard anything about Amy knows it's not true. And this is what the government, the military, gets away with. They just get away with it. And believe me, the first year and a half, I was on their butts. This is my daughter that had a very big career ahead of her, and a life. And you know what? The military, the people, like we said, she started in college. Okay, that's a farce. She goes. You go in. You go through your training. You learn. You're giving your honor, your dignity, and your service to the country. And what are they doing in return to these soldiers? To these victims? To the victims that have to live the rest of their lives what they have gone through. Some are fortunate to have a good road to go, and some are unfortunate to have to take a wrong road. And you know what? It is groups like this that have to continue across the country and it's hard to let your story out. It is. I mean, 2 years, I did it for a year. I fought the military for a year and took a year and a half off because I emotionally just closed up. And Colleen here, Amy brought us together. Through Amy's death, I have been blessed. I can't begin to tell you how many people have blessed my life. And I am here for Amy's cause. I am here for the cause of the victims that have and are going through what they're going through, for the past, the present, and especially the future. This is why we need these groups. We need to continue them and encourage them, and you know what? Let America know what's happening to the women and the men. We need military, okay, I understand that. But you think you're going into the military where it's safe. And there is a lot of damage and death within the state itself. Okay, my daughter was killed within in Iraq on her safe base. So that's my short story. Otherwise, I'll keep going, and I just appreciate and ask you to spread it around best you can. Thank you.
And I have also been very fortunate with all the people I've been able to meet and experiences I've been able to have. But we always realize it's because of a terrible tragedy that happened. But that happened, so how can we try and make the best of a terrible situation? So, this issue, of course, and I think if they're doing that to their fellow soldiers, what are they doing to the occupied people? You know, which is just what Dennis was saying. You know, it's like, okay, WikiLeaks came out. I think most of us knew that abominations occur during war by our troops. But to hear the stories that I think need to be told over and over again, we have to humanize the occupied people because they have been dehumanized. And if the country barely cares about the soldiers that are dying, they couldn't care less about the occupied people. So I'm on this bike ride. One of our first stops was
Holding this.
Palm Springs, and we rode our bike to Joshua Tree, and then we rode to 29 Palms Air Force Base. Marine Base. Sorry, Marine Base. And I'm not quite ready, but you're there for the reveal. I call that the reveal. It was a hard ride. The wind was blowing against us. A terrible headwind blowing against us. It was uphill, and it's like, this is not fair. If it's going to be uphill, we appreciate a tailwind. You know, you can have all the headwinds you want if we're on level ground or going downhill. So anyway, we're going out to this base. The organizer didn't really give us a clear idea of why we were going to the base. And so we're riding our bikes. It's really hard. We're going, what the heck are we doing? We're riding our bikes out to this base. What are we going to do when we get there? We thought it was a total bust, but apparently one of the units called the 2-7, like the 2nd division of the 7th whatever. You know, I'm not military, so I really don't know what it means, but they call it the 2-7. Had returned from Afghanistan. And so we were riding along, and the fence, the chain link fence for heading to the visitor center of the base started to be filled with signs like welcome home to our son, our daughter, our husband, whatever, our father, our mother. And there was some signs of welcoming. But the first sign we saw sent me into a rage. And this is what we saw. We liberated it from the fence. We were highly offended by the message, and we didn't think it was a good message. No, here. Oh yeah. Hide your daughters, hide your wife, hide everybody. The 2-7 is back in town. So they're bragging, they're actually transmitting their intention to rape and pillage the innocent women of that community, and everybody.
Yeah.
You know, so it's the daughter's wife and everybody.
Yeah, rape
So
culture.
they don't really care
Rape culture.
who they rape.
Yeah.
You know, so
They're proud of it.
One of our goals when we get to DC is to hang this on the White House fence.
Yeah.
Because
Yes.
actually Obama has daughters, he has a wife.
Yes, he does.
I would say he was part of everybody.
Yeah.
And this is what his troops are bragging about.
Yeah. They're
I think
rapists.
if they go back home and hang this on the fence,
Sickening.
what did they do when they were in Afghanistan?
Sickening.
And you would think, and I know that there are women in that unit.
Yeah.
And like Lisa was saying, it's a culture. It reminds me of the Catholic Church. You know, we can rape and murder, not murder, but maybe, I don't know. We can rape anybody we want, and we'll just transfer the priest, we'll just cover it up, we'll just hide it. So this is like something that, you know, I don't know how long, I don't know who hung this sign up, I don't know how long it was there, but I don't care. Everybody that passed it and left it up is complicit
Yes.
in this.
Yes.
And I got into a big debate with a Marine on my Facebook page. Oh boy. You know, he's supposedly a peace person saying, oh, Cindy, you know, they just have high testosterone. They're just boys. We'll be boys. Well, that's the kind of bullshit we're fighting.
That's right.
You know, so thank you for fighting that. And Colleen,
Yes.
I know how hard it is to tell your story. I have to tell my story every day. But in order to wake up the people of this country, we have to sacrifice a little bit of our own peace of mind. But as Dennis said, have peace within us. But I know that doing this is what gives meaning to my son's life.
Amen. Yep.
You know, he died for this culture of rape. He died for this violent culture. And we do, the only time we need a military is if we're ever attacked.
That's right.
And then all of us would go out. I'd even get my water bottle and start beating it. Stay away from my grandchildren. But it's all for profit. all here. I'm so glad to be in Phoenix. And I knew when I went on this bike ride that I could just contact my friends here in Phoenix and you guys would host us and make it very meaningful. You know, not just a stop for Cindy to sell shirts, but make it a very, and yesterday we were out there protesting drones.
Yes.
It was very, it was very funny because our protest was kind of co-opted by people who were thanking John McCain for a vote he recently did, and they were Democrats. I was like, well, what are you gonna do now? Vote for him? He runs. You're out there applauding him and thanking him. So he came out to talk to them, not to us, of course. And so I got my bullhorn. I was like, but you know, we're against all kinds of violence. We're against violence at home and violence overseas. And what about the drones? And you're applauding this war criminal and blah, 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 blah. So at least we were there to give witness to peace. You know, peace at home, peace abroad. And this culture of rape, murder, torture, and oppression. Thank you. So we'll put this on the White House fence. We'll get a picture before it's ripped down. It's easily ripped down. We know. We already did it once.